This is the Outpost RBA podcast, where we lead security teams to higher ground and new perspectives needed to secure the frontiers of enterprise, with hosts Will Robus and Stuart McIntosh.
Welcome, everyone, to the Outpost Security RBA podcast. I am your host, Will Robus, and with me here, as always, is my co-host and co-founder, Stuart McIntosh. Stuart, what do you know today?
I know that I've had to explain what daylight savings time is to a lot of people not in this country again. Yeah, that's
yes.
what I know.
The fall is. Do you think it's harder falling back or easier in the spring, or it doesn't really matter?
It's always disorienting. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I know we've tried to schedule some meetings, or I've tried to schedule some meetings. I think it was in Israel time, and they have time adjustment, but it's like a week or two after ours or before ours. So there's a couple of really handy websites that help you pick out what time is it?
What time is it now?
Yeah, what time is it this day in the world? So, well, today we're going to be talking about instead of aligning calendars, we're going to be talking about aligning competing priorities, which is
just as confusing.
Just as confusing, and also kind of a big thing to bite off. So in prepping for this, I kind of realized that we might be going down a rabbit hole. So I have part 2 of this planned for the next episode.
So people don't have to worry about this being 3 hours.
No, 3 hours or a week long training in execution and leadership. So yeah. No, we're looking forward to discussing this today, and thanks again for joining us. As always, we like to start off with a couple of housekeeping announcements and call outs. The first one is always the RBA Community. The web presence for that is rba.community. We also have a very active Slack group. Again, we continue to see new people joining every week, which is exciting. And it's just a really great knowledge base, on-demand knowledge base for security practitioners, not just in risk-based alerting and Splunk, but kind of all of threat detection and defensive security. Just had an office hour session yesterday where one of the members of the community showed off a couple of his apps, did a deep dive on those, and he works for a company in France, right? Or the UK?
No, out of the UK.
Yeah.
He is French, but lives in London.
Got it.
And works out of a London firm.
So we had a pretty cool international representation in the session yesterday. We also have some breakout sessions. I think once every quarter or so is kind of the goal. But we are working on releasing the 2024 schedule, at least the first quarter or first half of the year. That should be out soon. So check out rba.community to see that, or we post regularly on our LinkedIn, the events as well. So
that means we're almost halfway to .conf already.
Oh, right, because that's early June.
They moved it up, so it's now in June.
Well, hopefully it won't be 115 like it was last year. Second piece we like to call out is a free enterprise security assessment that we've been offering and doing with customers. It's a 2-hour over the shoulder kind of walkthrough of your Splunk environment. We start with kind of overall Splunk performance and then work into the kind of key frameworks of ES, and then get into what your kind of threat detection profile and output looks like. So we enjoy doing it. I know, Stuart, you enjoy doing it. And it's half sort of, all right, what's going on here? Where are you at? How can you do a little better? And the other half is really kind of an in-depth training of the mechanics of Splunk, how you can pay attention and ask. I mean, I think the big takeaway I had from the last one is a lot of people have all these questions about Splunk, or maybe like things they don't really quite understand, but don't even know how to ask. And the cool part about that assessment is essentially asks and answers all kinds of questions from a tooling and architecture standpoint, but then connects that to like how you can build out this tool set and your data to really produce process and systems from a security perspective. So that was a newer realization that I had, and I think it's just really cool.
What one might say, it helps you align your priorities. Maybe one could say that.
That's an outstanding lead-in, because that is one of the goals of the assessment. And I think the topic. So we'll just jump right into the topic because, like I said, you emceed it perfectly. So I mean, I got this topic from those conversations with customers, especially, because we always ask the question, hey, where are you trying to get to? What's your roadmap look like? What's your leadership asking for? What are your priorities? Kind of things like that. And a lot of times we just get this laundry list of all of these pieces of technology, all of these techniques. Some of them, have been around for a while. I mean, zero trust automation, but there's always new things popping up like AI and whatever crazy acronym that vendor stacks invent, right? So
well, and we talked about this, I think, in the first episode about frontiers of enterprise and the fact that the business is making decisions as well that are transforming what your priorities are. Tomorrow they could decide, hey, we're going to offer a new product, and okay, I guess I have to reevaluate my list again.
Yeah, and M&A activity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen, that's all cloak and dagger until announcement comes out, and it's usually, in the 11th hour. So, and even divestitures or like split offs, those are seen coming, ahead of time, but that's maybe more complicated because then you have to like sort things out and help, and essentially a new company stand on its own. That's pretty large. So this was kind of the impetus or the inspiration for this topic today. And we'll try to unpack it and do it justice, but this gets really quickly into the dynamics of change. So one of the list of things to do is one thing, but trying to execute them and make some progress is a whole nother thing. So we'll try to swallow this. We'll swallow this elephant, I guess, one bite at a time. So
I think there's one thing we can rule out. We've never spoken with a company or organization that did not have a list of projects. No one has come to us and said, I've got nothing. We're good. We got nothing going on. So that's the good news, is that you're in with at least 99.9% of everyone else. Everyone has this.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I approach this from again, first principles. We talk about it all the time, but I approach it from, all right, how do we solve a complex problem? And there's some fundamental steps and pieces to that. And then how do we translate that, right? The process of success, how do we translate that to the specific business of cybersecurity kind of today? So that's what we're going to try to attack today. So I don't even have, I have a framework here. right? I have a framework, not even a step-by-step process, but all these pieces.
So I want to come back a little bit to what you're saying, which is our list of to-dos is the complex problem that we're going to talk through today. It's not that there's complex problems on the to-do, it's that we want to figure out this process of getting priorities and having to figure out how to execute them and align them. That process will forever go on. As soon as we finish one, other two more might pop up, but this is the habit we're trying to talk about, is how to approach that list. Because I know the joke we always had is, which number one priority is this? Because everyone who ever came to security said, you must get this project done because it is a strategic initiative. And we were like, okay, which one? And what's funny is that year the company said there will only be 3, and by the end of the first quarter there was a dozen. And they said, well, it's not that we're adding, it's that we're making it more comprehensive. And it's like, yeah, but like, and that's just what was being pushed down to us. That wasn't just the stuff we had to get done. So I think this strengthening this muscle of how to collect and coordinate your to-dos is very powerful. And this could be for a security team. This could be for an individual. Just in general, think of this as, I have a long list of things that I believe have to be done. How do I organize this and kind of maximize it to become effective?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's a great summarization of where kind of we're starting. So the first, I think the first step is to kind of just step back and look at it as holistically as you can. And this is difficult, especially when you're executing and in the trenches. And it's difficult, I think, from our human brain perspective, because we think in transactions typically, but how we really need to think is in terms of systems. And we've talked about this on other episodes, and we're big fans of systems thinking, which is, again, kind of a first principle approach. But how you define that system is also kind of a challenging baseline thing. So there's a science to it, but then there's also an art. And I think that's the second tricky part about trying to think in systems. Have we had successful systems discussions, like in our experience, or like
all of
in
them?
your past? I mean,
all of them. No,
I meant more from a coming in cold standpoint. I mean, I guess like the closest thing we have to a systems approach in the industry right now are the frameworks, right? Which, again, is a laundry list of stuff. And from a maturity or a visibility standpoint, we've got MITRE, but again, that's not a system. It's a catalog.
I think the more memorable experiences that we've had, or conversations we've had, actually rely on, or actually kind of fall back to when teams when teams start interacting as a system. Meaning, I know that if I am successful, this is how it helps that other group be successful. Because all of a sudden they're figuring out not only what comes into them, but who goes after them, and how do I help both sides? How do I communicate to both sides of me? Because in order for me to get my job done well, I need them on my side. So how can I work with them more efficiently, more impactfully? So I think when you ask that, I think the ones that really stand out are the ones where you could see it kind of click in people's brains that this isn't a manual problem from a technology, or this isn't because we don't have 10 employees. Like that's not that, none of those magically make it click and start being effective. It's the system that clicks and all of a sudden starts being effective. So it's like people are used to trying everything. We bought this new thing, we got this new feed, and feeling maybe incremental improvements. Like, yeah, my day's a little bit better, fine. But in order to get that exponential or those episodic bets, that's the system clicking. And you'll see it. And what happens is it happens per person, because it's almost like their perspective changed a little, but they don't know how to explain it to someone next to them. Instead, they say, just do this because that's what clicked for me. So it's almost like we lose this epiphany translation as well. But so what does that click? I think that click is what you're talking about right here. That click is the fact that they suddenly removed themselves from the to-do and looked at the list as well as other people's lists. It's not just my to-do list, it's other people's to-dos. Well, hang on. Let's look at all of these and see where some overlap is, see where like things. In the project management world, this is agile, right? Like put all the cards up and thematically put them together. Like start binning, start classifying, start sorting. But the only way to even begin that process is to step back a little bit and just kind of objectively look at these things. If you're in the middle of doing it, you won't be able to step back and see, oh, there's other to-dos or other works going on.
Yeah. And no, that's interesting. You kind of made me flash back to like the early days of Outpost, which again were my like early days in cybersecurity in general. And I mean, personally, I had to figure this out, right? I had to sort this out and create my own mental model of what's the world that we're dealing with, and we're trying to attack or improve, or what's the universe, so I can apply the problem set and figure out how to solve it, right? So and that, I mean, early on, that universe was always data, right? The data is the lifeblood. The data is technically the aggregation of every single transaction individually, and which is massive, right? Terabytes of raw text a day, thousands of people, the entire internet essentially is your threat. So the way I look at the system, and the way that we've looked at it from a system and a fundamental building block standpoint, is really how do we organize this data in a intelligent and consistent way, right? And I think it's well, there's really five types of data from a security, especially detection standpoint, and that's endpoint, network, firewall, web, which we kind of have in one bucket altogether, email, authentication, and then kind of your fifth one is aggregating sort of this security tooling and information. So like malware, IDS, threat intelligence. And that's really it. That's the universe of what we have at our disposal. Does that hold up, Stuart, do you think? Or has it?
For detection response, yeah. And each one tells you, it sets an expectation. So when we say security tooling, it immediately sets an expectation for me. Oh, I'm probably going to see some level of confidence, some level of allowed or blocked, some signature somewhere, or what pattern surface that, like, what's interesting is simply by binning it into one of these, you've oriented my expectations of what it might be and how I can use it. So here's what's great. We see a lot of different environments, and as much as we would enjoy a vote with the CISOs that they'll buy the tech stack that we prefer, it's never been the case. No one has said, which technologies would you like us to have for this detection work? It just doesn't happen. So what's happened is we've had to say, listen, what types of outcomes can I get from endpoint data? What types of outcomes can I get from email data? And then what we do is when we work with a customer, an organization, we say, what types of tech do you have for email? We have Proofpoint, we have O365, we have G Suite, right? Like we have Barracuda logs, whatever. But what happened was we know all these capabilities off that type of data, and they simply say, we have this type of data available. And so what happens is we quickly take them out of that technology. It's not what Proofpoint tells you to do for detection. And now it's, oh, I'm on a different layer now. Now I'm looking at this a little more holistically about what is email behavior? What can I tell from it? Well, I can tell someone might be leaving. And a lot of people will be like, wait, what? Yeah. If I suddenly see a lot of email going out from a corporate address to a private like Gmail with a bunch of attachments, I bet you're leaving soon. And everyone will be like, well, that's like, this is just the nature of that type of data. And it doesn't matter. Like we can get Barracuda, O365 doesn't matter. But that's how we've approached system thinking, at least from our perspective, is how can I link patterns into these systems? Like I know email as a feed can give us this type of outcome.
Yeah, no, we might not get off this first topic, by the way, or this first step, because it's such a powerful simplification. And again, like we think in transactions, or when we think of a product set, we think of what does it give me? What are its features? What does it do? How does it produce something? Right. And, as we talk about this, anytime I see a new product or a new offering or a new whiz bang shiny thing, I bring it back to this mental model and I ask the questions like, all right, what data, where's the data coming from? What data does it see? What data does it not see? How is it fitting into this system? And is it is it improving it? Or is it just like some stupid, like, I don't want to call it a Band-Aid, but is it some frivolous?
It's just a reiteration of the same problem statement.
Right.
It's like new wallpaper, but the same home.
Yeah.
But here's what's interesting. So the way you just mentioned that was, my system is the ability to take a technology and translate that into detections, right? That's kind of the system that you were just mentioning, evaluating when you see vendor announcements, series rounds that venture investors have made in some of these startups, right? Whenever I see money being put into a company, I always take notice of it to see what are those investors seeing that might help me, like might augment like my approach to solving some of these problems, or that this company's solving. But let's go one higher. So you were looking at, does this help my detection problem statement or ability? If we go one higher and we start talking about, okay, well, what does that feed? Well, that feeds this whole system called detection and response. And so now I think I think now you're going into what we've called capabilities of a program. I am capable of seeing and responding to X as a behavior, as an attack path, as a behavior, as whatever. But if I can't see it, then it's just going to be hard to stop it. So that's why we kind of link them together, see and respond, detection and response. So, but what's another capability? Well, response is actually inherent in how well you know your tools. Because the response might be, oh, my only option is ignore or restage the machine, clean the machine. That's it. Well, if I know my tooling, my capabilities for response might be a little different. I might be able to isolate it. I might be able to re-authenticate the user or remove a file remotely, just different. But what we're doing ultimately is improving our detection and response capability. Just like I want to improve our patching capability. It's not going away. We're going to have to always know where we at, where do we need to be, and how do we get there from a patching perspective. That's a capability that an organization needs. And so now all of a sudden, the detection team can start talking with some of the other engineering teams and aligning what's going on. Because I'll tell you what, if they're more effective at patching, vulnerability management is going to have less work to do, because that's what most of those findings are. And I bet we're going to have fewer attacks because we're current, or we know how to respond so quickly that we don't have to get as spun up. So it's just these, you have to understand that there's different layers. There's the to-do, there's the why are we doing it, and then there's the what does this play overall program.
Yeah, and I guess that's the counter, or not the counter, but we've also talked to a number of customers who, again, this is on the tactical execution side. So it's either kind of a long list of priorities and a set of, hey, we've got a laundry list of capabilities that we need to implement, right? And it's a punch list more than a system. But the other one is, we've heard is, hey, we need a North Star here. We don't know where we're going and what we're actually trying to achieve. We're just kind of, again, trying to check this punch list off, and it's literally siloed, right, from a data execution team standpoint, but it's also siloed from kind of an approach and alignment standpoint. So, I mean, from a detection and response standpoint, right? Again, that's what we're focused on as a business. That's what that's our charter, essentially, as a company, is working with other companies to make their detection and response more successful, more durable, and all that. So, and how do we define that, right? And it's pretty simple, and it's something that's kept, me personally focused, as well as I think everything that we do as a company, from a product standpoint, from a, working with customers. And it's really, it's three things. And I think to the layers that you mentioned, Stuart, there's some clear interaction there. But the first one is, we need to find all the bad things. We need to find them all. When we find them,
like all, but yeah.
Well, but that's.
I feel the pressure of all. Yes.
Well, but that's from a systems perspective. That's the goal of the system, right?
Yeah.
To find out all. I mean, it's not possible.
You're talking North Star.
Yeah. We describe the lens we look at the system from, right? So the first order are these different sets of data, because they all represent transactions in the whole. And then from a what does success look like? What does done look like from the systems perspective and when it comes to security? And it's, find all the bad, stop all the bad. But then the third piece that I think, the third piece is prevent all of the bad in the future. And that's what people talk about from a resilience standpoint, from a proactive security standpoint, all those things like that. But from what I've seen, this is where the industry completely fails. And this is where all the snake oil comes from. It's not taking a systems approach to preventing the future bad. And the only way you can be successful at that is finding the bad and stopping it and understanding where it came from in the first place, right? I mean, you're always going to have 0 days, but if you're able to see those and contain them, you've kind of, those are lower probabilities, or I don't know. I think I went down the wrong rabbit hole there, but
the number of vulnerabilities increases every year of known filed vulnerabilities. We have not, I don't think we've had a year that was below the year before it. Even maybe, but below it, I don't think that's happened. So how can that be? Like how can, here's one for you. Why are there so many AI security companies that are focused on securing your AI work? This is new technology. This is, this isn't like, oh, it's something from the 70s that when the standard for email was written, it was written in a way that no one knew it would be abused. This is like a handful of years. So why are we continue to not know how to prevent bad? Yeah. So because of that, the first 2 bullets of your North Star may not go away. Because if we ever got good at preventing future, then that means there's a fuse on what we do. At some point, it'll finish. Right? Like if we learned how to prevent future bad, then we just have to clean up what's going on right now until we can get into that state where all things are prevented. But that's just never going to happen. So it's important to have all three. It's important to have the capability to find bad, the capability to stop bad, but never lose that goal of preventing it before it even occurred. Like that's how we have the bandwidth to do the other two. Because if we only focused on seeing it and stopping it, our list would grow every single day. It just gets worse. It's that third one of preventing future or reoccurring. Just fine. You can't stop all future bad. Fine. Can you stop the thing that hit you? Just do that. Just stop the thing that hit you last going forward. It's absolutely. And what's interesting is if we brought security programs back to these three and we said, are you part of see it? Are you part of stop it? Or are you part of prevent it? I bet we could align every security effort that's worth its merit on one of these. At least one of them.
Is there
like multi-factor projects, right? Like that's been all the rage. All the rage lately because of all the ransomware attacks has been we need to strengthen our ability when it comes to multi-factor. We need to do pinning to what time of day it is or something like personal knowledge, something because the current process is letting bad in. So there's all of these engineering projects looking at how do we develop something that's not more friction for the end user, but better prevention. Well, perfect. That's that third bullet. Yes, we should be doing that.
What if is that are these three things where the competing priorities really start to collide? I mean, because it makes sense to start with the prevention, right? And invest heavily in it. But if
I think people over index on one of these three. So have we not met shops that want to automate the world? They want to automate the finding of bad. Like, yeah, the robots go and find the bad, and then the robots go and stop the bad, and the robots go and they over indexed on stop. They automated all these stop the bad activities. They over indexed on it. And why? They probably got a little success with it. They probably felt like that's the most impactful thing they did. And so they just kept rerunning that play in the playbook. They over indexed on it. And they didn't kind of step back and say, wait, I need to be focused on all three of these getting better. I should always be getting better on these three. I shouldn't over index on one of them for too long. It's how to rebalance the scale. Like, and here, every security program knows when the scales are off. You know it. Why? You dread the work. It's as if you already could mind read what the to-do list is or the task list, because you're so far leaning that way that it's just every day is the same. So you know when you're over indexed. We've also seen this when the edict came down, write a detection for every MITRE attack technique. That's over indexing on find all the bad. Here's the best part. I've talked to people from programs like that, and my first question is, what do the analysts do when they get one of these alerts? And they're like, they investigate it. I'm like, great. And then, like, what are they looking at? If it's bad, like they have no idea. They were so focused on find bad that no one ever said, how do we even know if it's bad, or how do we stop it? And so this is where over indexing happens, and we know it. We know, right? Or the here. So what is okay? So we did an example of what does over index on stop look like. That tends to be automate all the things. What does over index of find all the bad look like? This is where you see threat hunting programs, filling the MITRE attack technique list in, AI and machine learning for detections, right? Like these are the types of efforts you see when they're definitely highly leveraged on that point. So what does prevent all future bad look like from like an over indexing example? You know them. It's the buy all the tools. If they're saying things like, oh, we're going to do AI, we're going to do zero trust and an insider threat program, like if it looks like a buffet where they took some of everything, that's probably over indexing on prevent all future bad. That's a leadership group that decided we are gonna buy our way out of this security hole. Like, we're just gonna stack all the boxes in the hole and climb out.
Yeah. No, sorry, you just got me thinking about that. So I mean, all right. If we break down find, stop, prevent into a matrix, right? I mean, you just described this matrix, but I'm mental modeling this. And then you put sort of a scorecard across three categories. So we have three find, stop, prevent. Mm-hmm. And then we overlay that with technology, process, and people. And how all the customers, all the situations, all the different tech stacks and environments, and even all of the breaches that we've seen the last 4, 5, 8 years. The breakdown, the failure point is 100% process, because we have all of this technology from a find, stop, prevent standpoint, right? The tooling, the automation from a remediation standpoint, the accessibility. I mean, the cloud in and of itself just gives you a ton of connectivity and accessibility. And then, from a technology standpoint, I mean, Splunk has what, 1,300 detections in their library alone that are freely available. I mean, so technology is
but now you have a different problem. Now you have the Gladwell problem of, what is it, 70 different pasta sauces, right? That's what happened was everyone shared, which is great. Everyone shared, like, all these frameworks, all of these community repositories of detections, even vendors. The fact that vendors like Splunk have released all of these detections to people who don't even own the product, that's amazing. But now you have a different problem, which is, which one do I start with, right? So now what we did is, we used to be good at the industry used to shepherd in my priorities. Well, what happened was, now I got flooded with so many options, I need to decide how to organize. And that's a trait that I don't know if many security teams have vocalized or worked through.
Well, and
do we have a process for arranging and selecting our efforts?
Right. And the other, so again, across the matrix, technology, process, people, we've seen, I mean, even the smallest security teams that we've worked with in the smallest organizations, like, they have smart people and they're motivated and working hard, and and they have the more people you add to the team, it's not, they don't add the same people. Like, there's a diversity of experience, and so the people part, and people talk about the talent shortage and, like, not enough cybersecurity people.
Another report just came out. Was it like a backstop of like 3.5 million unfulfilled security jobs, whatever?
Right. But I mean, we've seen the flip side of that, where when you implement and integrate a process, a systems process, in a team, in a security organization, all of a sudden they don't need more people, right? They might need more people eventually, but that immediate demand goes away, because they've created a new system that has much more
upskilled.
Yeah. Upskilled, integrated, got all these tools to work together, all this data to work together, all things like that. I mean, that's
if I can switch from Excel to Splunk, isn't that going to save lots of hours of me scrolling through fields looking for things? Because now I can just put it in and run a search. I don't have as much human horsepower demand, because I've gotten smarter about how I work.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back to that one of the early episodes. It's that security, that dissonance versus symphony, or even like a kind of a flow concept.
So to your idea, so as I look on the find, stop, prevent, there's people throughout my life, through customers, who are amazing at finding bad. Like that's their core spec. Like they it, they just can smell it from a mile away. They just have this innate sense. But guess what they were bad at? Well, they were bad at understanding the engineering practices of preventing something. They were just really good seekers, really good finders. But then there's engineers who absolutely know their tech. And you'll run into this with cloud engineers. It's amazing what they know, but what they don't understand is how to prevent something. So if I can clue them in on like this, like I would love it if it could do something like this. And they're like, oh yeah, it can. We just have to do this, then that. So what I mean is these 3 bullets of your North Star, find, stop, prevent. Do you have human talent that understands these 3? Great. Do you have technologies that allow those humans to do these 3? If you don't have a sim, find all the bad might be difficult, no matter how smart that person is, right? It just, we need a certain minimum level of technology to unlock the humans who are really good at this.
Yeah.
And then,
or even like, say you want to go simless, which is whatever. I mean,
whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever that is. But you have to
still need a search box, period.
You still need to see, you need to have visibility across your 5 key areas, right? Endpoint, network, email, that's your evaluation matrix there. But anyway, sorry.
And then your third is process. So what process does is allow the other 2 to become more effective. That's scale. The first 2 are essentially can I, and process is scale. That's where your quality, your repeatability, your efficiency, that's where that kicks in. But again, across all of these, find all bad. If that one person just copies and pastes searches all day, that's not very good scale, but that's because there's no real process. So let's take a process view. Oh, I can schedule these searches. Oh, I can use something like RBA to help filter and funnel and correlate. Oh, okay. That's now bringing the process in the system is all of it. But the reason I'm highlighting this is that intersection you're talking about is essentially, if I were to buy a new EDR tomorrow, how would I evaluate it? Probably all 3 of these across my 3 people, process, tech. How difficult is the tech? How expensive is it? Does it integrate with things? Great. What kind of workflows are in this tech that I can take advantage of, or different roles, different capabilities? And then the people, do they have training available? How good is it? How much effort is it? Do people pick it up well? Do they remember things? So you can do those 3, but then the other 3 is, how does this help me find? How does this help me stop? And how does this help me prevent? So some things may be amazing at prevention and 0 analytics coming out of it. So for find, it sucks. I might be okay with that depending on how it scores with the other. But all I mean is, this is a potential way of seeking alignment to this North Star, is take the things you're thinking of doing as a program, as a security program. Hey, we are getting pressure to spin up a threat intel group, a threat intel capability. Great. Measure it against these 3 and the people, process, tech. What are your goals? How does it align with this? Because then all of a sudden you figure out, I'm not super focused at hiring a person in a role and saying you're now a threat intelligence analyst. And they say, what should I do? And what they end up doing are book reports. They take a bunch of public stuff, they synthesize it into a paragraph or cliff notes, and then send it to leadership. Well, how did that improve my position towards the North Star? So these kind of grand visions of grandeur, but output of poverty comes from not properly aligning it to this North Star. Because if it was aligned and you knew how it fed it, there's no surprise that it would be a success.
So
yeah, this kind of took a different path.
Yeah, we caromed off of whatever straw man script we had.
You had notes. Yeah.
This is no, I think this is see, it's the power of systems thinking with first principles and mental modeling. So sorry, I'm trying to articulate what I want to say next. From a priority standpoint, based on, I mean, kind of this matrix, but also from what we've seen, again, like no team, no company we've been in has been short on tools or capability. No one's been short on, even small teams still have a lot of experience and can be
We've been a part of 3-person security departments.
Yeah. And some big
who actually were better than some like 100-person security teams I've seen.
So from a priority and investment standpoint, from a pure investment standpoint, the ROI across all of those things is going to be greatest if you invest in process, and that process to the end of kind of those three pieces of the North Star: find, stop, prevent, regardless of the technology, the tool. So,
and I think process brings awareness of the role of the technology and the role of the humans. Like, it helps illuminate. So one of the things that we used to run into all the time was we would never get these project priorities done because people were busy. And leadership would say, well, what are they so busy doing? And it's like, well, work. Well, what kind of work? But what was happening was people were taking care of technology, but no one could identify processes to say, well, which process should be improved, or which one is eating all of this time? This is corroding our ability to execute on new priorities. No one could ever quantify it until you would sit down and say, just take me through your day. Oh, shoot. Okay. Here, I'll give everyone an example, a perfect example of this. When the report a potential phishing email button first hit the space, it was amazing. It was such a fast heads up for security analysts that something bad might be going on. It was great. And it formatted the email, so we got all the forensic data we needed about a potential phish. It was great. And then what happened was all this security awareness training started spreading and saying, if you see something weird, report it. And that button was so frictionless that they had no idea that they were essentially taking away 10 minutes of a human being's time every time they clicked the button. They were disassociated from it. They just knew, click it. And what was funny is we started getting like newsletter complaints. Like, these people were like, yeah, this newsletter just keeps coming in, and they'd report it to us to like clean up spam. It was terrible. So what happened was we tried to implement a process to improve our ability to find bad, and it got so blown out of proportion that it ended up becoming this huge amount of effort. And what was everyone's response? Automate it. Just automate it. And it's like, yeah, cool. Okay, so now we just layer more on, right? More engineering. And then suddenly someone gets popped, they get their credentials compromised, and everyone comes back and says, we spend millions of dollars on this phishing mailbox and this report a phish. Why didn't that catch it? Because it didn't look like a fish. We spent all this money, all this engineering, all this problem solving, and it got circumvented because someone took 10 more minutes to make the email look good. And that's, so know these bets that you're making. And the best way of knowing where you're investing your chips into, process. Where are the processes? Because that's the best way of knowing what bets have I made on the table. Because sometimes I think people just think there's a curtain over the table. They have no idea where they made investments. They know who they write checks to, but that's not necessarily like a bet. That's just the expense of being there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. This discussion definitely became very, very organic early on. But
so I think if nothing else, we gave a couple of axes to or matrices or just thoughts to at least organizing your priorities. That find, stop, prevent, that 3, that's super curious to me because that's kind of like this overall security capability. Does it help me find things? Does it help me stop things? Or does it help me prevent things? I love that. And then the other access of, is this full? Is this for process? Is this for tech? With a huge focus on surface anything that's a process that should probably be in your higher priority list.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we've seen some huge successes in the companies we've worked with, and the ROI and success has come from that process piece, right? Minimal tech, minimal changes in people, like from a dollar perspective, right? You're not spending very much more money on tech. You're not spending much more money on people. You spend that money on process and your ROI is going to be off the charts and probably durable and scalable. So if process, yeah.
That workflow action one that we talked about with the, I didn't know Splunk could do that. Where did that come from? It came from the fact that analysts did not have approved external portals to research. So everyone brings their own. All we did is say, hey, which ones do we want every analyst to have at their fingertips? We made a clickable button. And now all of a sudden we've instituted a more standardized process and we made it more efficient.
Yeah. So
all because it was focused. And what is that? Like 10 minutes of time to talk about and put in? It's nothing.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think we'll wrap here for this week. And I want to pick this discussion up in the next episode. But introduce a framework to help people execute on this, right? So how do you implement process successfully? And we've got a framework that we're going to but attached to this in the next discussion. So I think this is a perfect foundational piece of that. And yeah, we're going to be talking about
bring your newly prioritized and classified list to that conversation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this North Star matrix here on forward. So this has been a great discussion. Thank you as always for the mental exercise, and hopefully everyone listening enjoyed it, finds this insightful, and are excited to hear kind of the continuation. So thanks again for listening as always, and we will talk to you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Outpost RBA podcast. Stuart McIntosh has over 20 years of experience building and maturing security programs inside Fortune 500 companies. In 2018, he gave a talk at Splunks.conf titled "Say Goodbye to Your Big Alert Pipeline and Say Hello to Your New Risk-Based Approach," which started the rise of RBA. As the creator and architect of risk-based alerting, he pioneers security methodologies at Outpost Security, which he co-founded with Will. Will Robus has spent the last 20 years in the operations or financial C-suites at technology and security companies, focused on what drives results and successful scaling. At Outpost Security, he works with CISOs to imagine a more expansive future for their SOC, once it has a solid RBA foundation. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Share it with your security team and CISO. Connect with us on LinkedIn and contact us at outpost-security.com to lift your team out of the fog of alert confusion with RBA 0 to 1.